Welcome everyone. Welcome to lesson 2.10. This one is about mortgages and about taking a mortgage. First thing we're going to do is there are several types of homes that could apply for a mortgage. The most common one in and around Spruce Grove is the single detached, but we also have duplexes. We've got multifamily units, triplexes, quadplexes, etc. We've got condos, which could be apartment style, or they could be in a duplex multifamily setting. You also have lots and lots of different types of houses. So what is a mortgage? Most people don't just buy houses when houses are, let's say 300,000 to let's say 700,000. Most people do not have that kind of cash just sitting around to buy the home. And so a mortgage is really money borrowed to buy a home, right? So it is borrowed money. Thing is that that's a lot of money. And so the house itself becomes the collateral that if you don't pay back the money, the bank then gets to take your house. And that's what we call a foreclosure. And so foreclosure is really just taking back a house because you haven't paid your mortgage. Now, mortgage payments, regular payments, are blended, means that includes the principal. So you're paying this back, right? So you pay back money plus interest. Okay. Now this could also include additional money charged in terms of fees, could also be lumped up into this mortgage payment, right? And so all of this winds up becoming the money and fees. Usually money and fees are what's in the principal, and then the interest is tacked on as you go through. There are some things that you need to consider before taking a mortgage. First one, do you have the necessary financial management skills? Meaning, will you be able to make mortgage payments? Will you be able to take care of a house and pay the bills? Are you financially stable? Are you ready to take on all those responsibilities of owning the home? Some other things to consider. Time required for home maintenance. Major life changes that could be clouding your judgment. This could include getting a promotion, getting married, right? And another one is, will you be living in the same place for a while? If you're only going to be in a place for 3, 6, 9 months, it's probably not a good idea to buy a house for that time. You should be looking at renting. And for some people, buying a house, the time is never right. Either it's family situation or not wanting the responsibility, or just the way they've crunched their finances or the way they wish to choose to do their finances can all have an impact on whether or not to purchase a house and thus get a mortgage. Because if you don't buy a house, you won't be buying a mortgage, getting a mortgage. Before signing, general rule of thumb is make sure that those housing expenses do not exceed 35%. Now, here we've said of your 6-month average take-home pay. The reason for that is because some jobs do not have regular payments. And so what you're looking at is making sure that 6 months on average, will you be able to cover that 35%? Because some months might be higher, some months might be lower, and you want to take a 6-month average in order to figure out that 35%. And please remember, you are morally responsible for your debts. Now, if you're required to have a cosigner, now I'm talking about a cosigner other than your spouse on a mortgage, just because the lender doesn't expect you to actually pay them back. And so I would not recommend cosigning for anyone if they are not financially ready, because you will wind up with those payments. Now, cosigner who's a spouse, because you're purchasing the house together, of course, having them as a cosigner is a normal thing, but it's your house together, and that makes a difference. Cost of a mortgage. There are several things that will add to the cost of a mortgage, and one of them is CMHC fees, which is a Canadian Mortgage and Housing Corporation. Now, CMHC fees is basically insurance on mortgages. Okay, so this is money paid to help cover the cost in case of default, because the process and the legal process of trying to foreclose is a big one. Now, you can avoid those CMHC fees by having a 20% down payment or more. If you have less than a 20% down payment, CMHC fees are mandatory, meaning that legally required to buy this particular insurance within Canada. So depending on how much you purchase, and again, there are key points here where you have amounts of standard premiums. Okay, and that's for the total loan. These last two are not always going to be required by law, although may wind up being charged depending on circumstances, but they are a significantly lower amount of the purchase price. Mortgages, if you extend the amortization, there's also going to be additional surcharges that will be added on to this, and so it's just something to keep in mind. CMHC fee will not allow mortgages with at least 5% down payment, and a typical mortgage, a first mortgage, will have an 25 years to pay it back schedule. That schedule to pay it back is what we call the amortization period, how long it is expecting to pay back a mortgage. Now, a typical first mortgage being 25 years. However, shorter amortization better reflects payment to get back, pay it off, and yes, you can go with shorter. The 25 years is just a typical first mortgage. Now, you're not setting your terms for the full 25 year, right? You're not setting an interest rate for 25 years because the interest rate fluctuates too much. And so companies have what they call a term, meaning that the amount of interest that you pay and the style of mortgage that you're carrying will be up after a certain amount of term, in which case things then can change. You can change the way that you are operating within that mortgage. Okay. Taking a look, there are two types of mortgages. The first one is a fixed mortgage, which means that for the entire term, the interest rate does not change. Where in a variable, interest rate will change based on what's happening in the market. Now, in a normal situation, the variable rates will be lower than the fixed rates. And the reason for that is because if a bank is committing to 5 years at a fixed, let's just say a 5-year term, if they're or a term amount, they want to make sure that if interest rates rise, that they will still be getting some money. So let's say right now the interest rate might be at, let's say, 3%, but your 5-year term, you may be getting 4%. Now, what the bank is betting is that if the interest rate goes up above 4%, they're still getting a fair amount of money. If you go with the variable rate, you may start at 3%, but you might wind up at 5% or 6%, let's say 3 years later or 4 years later. And so that becomes a little bit of a risk. Fixed rates, usually are what people go for because they want to lock them in when interest rates are low, and variable tends to be what people tend to go with when interest rates are high. However, it depends really on what's happening within the market at the time. Okay, payments. There's a lot of value in reducing the number if you can make it work in terms of the number of payments. Early payments can make a huge amount of difference to the interest that you pay, and having increase your payments, more money goes towards the principal because the interest does not change if you add more to it. Just a quick little example, based on a $200,000 mortgage over a 20-year term at 5% interest, an extra $100 payment will save you $100 in additional interest, virtually doubling your payment, because over that 20 years, you're not paying interest on that $100 over a full 20 years. So even at 5%, you're still saving quite a bit of money. Okay, now if the numbers wind up looking encouraging, then ownership might just be right for you. If they look discouraging, it could not be. And mostly, usually, high school students, those numbers look a little bit overwhelming. And that's just part of the stage of life that you're at, which is why most high school students don't buy houses and get mortgages. Sometimes a more affordable housing can make the burden more financially viable, and so you need to take a look at the whole picture of things before you do it, and you can build up some equity. What is equity, you might be asking? Equity is the difference in the value of your home and the amount of your mortgage. If, let's say, we buy, again, a $300,000 home, we took out a $240,000 mortgage because we paid $60,000 in down payment. That means that $60,000 winds up being our equity. Now, after a while, and you've paid down this mortgage, maybe it's, let's say, $100,000. You own a $300,000 home. The value on the mortgage is now only $100,000. You have $200,000 worth of equity. Now, during that time, the value may have even gone up to, let's say, $350,000, which means that if you own now a $350,000 home, even though it was only $300,000 to begin with, and you only owe $100,000, the difference between the two, $250,000 of equity. Okay, don't expect that you'll be able to form the same housing as your level parents at first. Regardless of what some TV shows depict, it's usually never that way. Usually people build up to those houses. Now, many people actually go to a lender before shopping for a house. And what this is what we call a pre-approval. And the idea here is when you get a pre-approval, first of all, you know what it is that you can get for a mortgage. Know what you can get. And so you know what the interest rate might be. You know what the term is. You know what the payments will be before shopping for the house, and you kind of take a look at, okay, this is our maximum. It saves you looking at houses only to find out that you can't get the money, right? It can also say, after going through, you may wind up saying, well, home ownership maybe is not a really good idea. And so you can even avoid that whole process before getting into the whole aspects of it. Some things to consider when purchasing home. Please remember, you should allow some amount for things like lawyers' fees, real estate fees, moving cost, hookup fees in terms of hooking up your utilities. All these expenses, and these expenses are what we call the closing costs. Okay, and so these closing costs should be in there. Different situations for different whatnot, but so please take a look at the closing costs in addition to everything else that you're looking through. If you're just starting a home, remember there's going to also be things such as additional cost for groceries, right? If you're first moving out, you're going to need to buy every single condiment, every single spice and whatnot that you're using with personal care items such as cleaners and toilet papers. Are usually part of that first moving out. And if you're moving out into a house, please remember those are some additional costs. Furnishings and appliances such as tables and chairs, as well as there's a thing called the Diderot effect, which is kind of like, because now I've got a new home, sometimes the furniture and appliances don't look good, and so we wind up buying some new things to go with the new house. Okay, please keep in mind that is a real psychological thing where all of a sudden your furniture that looked fine in your old house all of a sudden doesn't fit, and so those are additional expenses. My wife and I, when we bought our last house, we actually saved $10,000 knowing that we were going to be buying a whole bunch of new furniture and things like that, in addition to the cost of redoing the basement, as well as all the costs of the closing costs in terms of it. There's a lot to consider. Potential difficulties with the possession date of a mortgage can result in two initial payments very close together, and so talk to your mortgage lender about this and be prepared. You may want to keep some money on the side for that as well. So let's take a look at a few examples. There are two mortgage calculators that I'm going to kind of recommend. The first one being the one through CMHC, the Canadian Mortgage and Housing Corporation, their mortgage calculator. So let's take a look at an example here. If the purchase price is $380,000, we're going to just type that in for the purchase price. We've got a $30,000 down payment over a 20-year amortization. So we're going to change that amortization to 20 years. The mortgage interest rate is 3.25%, and we just want to know the monthly fees. So we're going to first of all just calculate with the monthly mortgage. We see what the CMHC fees are, and that is this $14,000 that we got here. $14,000. So the value of the mortgage is actually $364,000. Because you're paying $38,000 for the home minus the down payment plus those fees, and we already got that monthly mortgage payment, $2,060.57. So $2,060.57. That's the monthly mortgage payment. If we wanted the weekly payment, we're going to recalculate this to the bi-weekly payment. The bi-weekly payment. Now, there's two types, the accelerated or the regular. We're going to go with the accelerated because what that's doing is going to recalculate, and we find that that payment bi-weekly is $1,030, and how many cents was that? 29 cents. Okay. Now, to find the real amortization, you're not going to really be able to find this within here as much as, oh, I guess you could. Looks like the real amortization now, instead of 20 years, is 18 years. Notice the amount of principal is $24,800 that you're paying off in that year, as opposed to the interest, where it would actually have been different. And so 18 years. We've saved 2 years off the purchase price. Let's take a look at the second payment. Buying a $325,000 home, so slightly less, $25,000 payment. So we're going to just restart all these numbers. Putting in the new numbers, $325,000 with a $20,500 payment. The interest rate is only 3% here, and we're doing the amortization over 25 years. We'll start with the monthly payment just so that we can get the numbers here. Here we can see the numbers. CMHC fees are going to be $12,180. Which means the amount of the mortgage is $316,680. And that monthly payment is $1,498.67. That should be 4. The accelerated bi-weekly payment. So if we change that to an accelerated bi-weekly payment and recalculate it, you're going to find out it's exactly half. So $749.34. And if we change that monthly payment also to, let's say, 20 years, we wanted to know what the monthly payment is. We're going to recalculate, and you see this is now $1,753.36. Okay. Reason why, again, you're paying off your mortgage 5 years faster. If we take a look at that interest rate through the total, you're going to find that interest rate is a lot less. If you're looking for totals, I do recommend actually using this calculator through Scotiabank. As another one, we can change that interest rate to 3%, figure out the monthly payments. We see that the monthly payment they've got is approximately the same. Again, these calculators, they're always estimates. Oh wait, mortgage amount is $316,680. So they've got 1,499 as opposed to 1,498.67, 21 months. But you can then actually create this personalized report, which is very handy. And those personalized reports will allow you to kind of get a full look at the full interest charges. Right, balance, principal paid, you can see the total amount that you would actually be paying in interest is $132,922, and again you're paying almost $450,000 in total over that 25 years. Okay, even though there is interest rates compared to the amount that you're paying in rent, the fact that you have an asset afterwards can be something that would make this worthwhile. Thanks for watching, and if you got any questions, let me know.